I'm encouraged by how we fought and how we competed and how we kept playing through a first half that, had the feeling of here we go at times. But the bottom line is you gotta end up with one more point than your opponent, and we didn't.
That kind of says it all. Head coach Dirk Koetter, Bucs' third straight loss on the season after starting the year 2-0. I am Mike Nabors. Welcome to our podcast, A Few Extra Bucs, here on pewterpirates.com. We'd like to thank our title sponsors, House of Brews and Lutz on the corner of Northdale Mabry and Van Dyke, and of course our co-title sponsor, Sea Dog Brewing Company. Two great locations in Clearwater and Treasure Island on the beach. Great brews, great food, great service. I was there the other night. They never disappoint. All three, all the above, they give it to you. Well, let's bring in our crew here, our producer Justin Thomas and Roy Cummings. And, man, you almost had a Stanford miracle there at the end, Roy.
Yeah, pretty close to it. That was a fun little ending to not really, at the end of the day, a pretty good football game, really. But it almost worked. Look, there aren't too many plays you can try to run with 7 seconds left on the clock. I suppose the other option would have been throw it in the end zone, hope for a pass interference penalty, and maybe one more, you hope that the guy catches it. But no, I thought that was a gutsy play call. I thought it was a good play call, and I thought they executed it to near perfection. Boy, who would have thought that on a play where you just need good hands, Deshaun Jackson would have been the one not to have him. But such is life.
Well, if you don't trust our Bucs insider, Roy Cummings, you should, because Justin and I should, at least. We predicted the Bucs would beat the Steelers on Monday night, and Roy said that the Steelers would win. We both predicted the Bucs would go on the road and win. And Roy, I think he's the voice of reason now, Justin. He picked the Falcons.
He can have the title.
What do you think? He can have the title? Okay. Well, speaking of that, Roy, you kind of touched on it. Here's what Dirk Koetter said about the last play and the play call.
It's hard to score on one play from the 20. So, Jameis had options, but when you're going full speed, one play to win the game from the 20, it's tough. It's just he's got people chasing him closing in on him from all sides. But there's not a lot of great plays on one play from the 20.
And here's what Jameis Winston had to say about that final play call.
That was a great play call. We had plenty of options. It's tough to call a play from the 20-yard line. And I think we had 7 seconds, actually. So we tried to make a play. The purpose of that is just do not get tackled with the ball in your hand.
Roy, you touched on it. Not many options with that much time left and given their field position either.
Yeah, I like the execution. I really do. I mean, Jameis Winston got a big chunk of yards. He throws it behind him. Adam Humphries can't handle it. Mike Evans picks it up and a great basketball move. You can almost kind of sit there getting ready to drive the key and, right about as he gets, inside the paint there, he turns and shovels it back outside for a 3-pointer maybe. And unfortunately, Deshaun Jackson couldn't handle the pass. So, it bounced a little, but hey, again, and like Dirk said, in real time, going live, it's tough to do. But I thought they did a pretty good job of it. They made it fun, made it exciting. Just couldn't quite execute at the end with the way they needed to. It's unfortunate that it comes down to that, but it did as a result of a lot of other issues.
I don't know how you felt, but I felt like if Humphries would have had control, he would have been tackled. But I think Deshaun would have gotten in there. It would have been close, but I think he would have gotten in there. How do you feel?
Well, I don't disagree. I think you're right that it probably would have definitely ended had Adam Humphries actually picked the ball up. I don't think he was close enough, and he was too far into the middle of the field. What would have happened with Deshaun Jackson is he had 5 defenders chasing him just as he catches the ball, if he catches it. It's a race to it's a 3-yard race to the end zone, and if he catches it and just keeps going. He might make it. I got the feeling he would have made it if he could have caught it and kept going. But if he catches it and has to set himself, he probably never would have got there. It might have been another, lateral backwards somewhere. But no, I think good for Dirk Koetter trying that play, or maybe it was Todd Monken who called it. Whoever called it, I agree with it 100%. My guess is that whoever called that, Dirk had to sign off on it. And again, I thought they executed it to to near perfection.
It's so easy to second guess a play call like that, but the quarterback draw, to me, with all the Buccaneer weapons they have, it creates so many options. And you saw Deshaun Jackson. It's almost as if you see it all the time with receivers dropping passes, just thinking about all the room they have in front of him. Well, I think he was thinking about the urgency he had in front of him. He had to time that perfectly and keep going. So he was obviously frustrated afterwards. But let's run down the end of that game. I mean, you have under 3 minutes left. And Dan Quinn, I salute you, my friend, because I'm yelling at you from my living room. What are you thinking? You're sending Matt Bryant out there for a 57-yard field goal when you could just pin the Bucs back and take your chances. But, boy, he had a lot of faith in his kicker. And here's what Dirk Koetter said about that call afterwards.
That was an unbelievable call by Coach Quinn or whoever made it. Now, Matt Bryant's money. I've seen him make that kick, but where we're going to get that ball, needing a field goal, I told him after the game. I told Coach Quinn that was a hell of a call by him.
I think personally he's crazy, Roy. What do you think?
Well, I can see all sides in this one. I tell you what, it's one of those calls that the coaches get paid all the millions of dollars they get paid to make. It's gutsy to try it, but you know what? Look, I have a lot of faith in Matt Bryant. Remembering him when he was with the Buccaneers and was as good a kicker as the Bucs ever had, and I still wonder, really, at the end of the day, why it was Mark Dominic let him go all those years ago. I guess he didn't want to pay him. He thought he could do just as well with a few other guys. Hadn't quite worked out that way. It's really been, except for Connor Barth, it's been a mess ever since at that position. But and Connor Barth gave him, several good years. But look, Matt Bryant, he may be headed to the Hall of Fame, and it's because of his clutch ability. And he, I don't think 57 yards, 58 yards is too much for him in the clutch. I really don't. So I see why he would do it, but I could also see why you would punt there. The last thing you want is the Buccaneers to have a short field. So you absolutely have to believe you. But you know what? At the end of the day, that's what kickers are supposed to do. They're supposed to go out and make 58-yard field goals, in the clutch. And they're supposed to make extra points. And for whatever reason, Bucs can't seem to find one who can do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I hate to pin it on the extra point, but it really changed the tempo of the game, because how many times throughout that game, whether it's the fact they went for two or even at the end of the game where they could have gone into overtime, or the fact that Quinn decided to have Matt Bryant out there, I mean, almost every move was a domino effect from that missed extra point. Didn't you feel that way watching the game?
Absolutely, yeah. And in my breakdown of the game, which is available on pewterpirates.com, be sure to check it out. If you're listening, and if you're not listening, you check it out anyway. But
why aren't you?
I point that out because you're right. Once you miss that extra point, now you've got to try a 2-point conversion, which also fails. Now, later on to the game, fast forward to the end of the fourth quarter, the game could have been tied at that point. And at that point, even if the Bucs defense holds and it ends just as it does on the last possession for the Falcons with a field goal, well, then all the Bucs have to do is kick a field goal. And all of a sudden, at the 20-yard line, it's a completely different game plan. Yeah. You're kicking the field goal and going to overtime and saying, okay, let's see what happens there. But you're in, you've got a chance to at least tie it or maybe win it. And it's a completely different set of play calls, my guess is, for the Bucs offensively if they make that extra point. Sometimes it doesn't seem like a big deal, an extra point, but boy, oh boy, in this case, it just kept mounting and mounting and mounting into trouble that they just couldn't get themselves out of.
Here's what Dirk Koetter said about the effect of that missed extra point in this Buccaneer loss up in Atlanta.
It hurts to miss an extra point right off the bat. You get a fast start, and it's a little bit deflating to miss an extra point. I mean, Chandler feels worse than anybody else. I mean, it's not like no one's fired up about it, but we got guys making mistakes, and different guys make different mistakes on different plays, and that was his. So. You're chasing points the rest of the game, but would it have mattered at the end? That's hard to say.
Dirk doesn't want to hang his kicker at the end, but obviously that had a huge impact and changed the tempo of this game. Let's talk about the tale of two halves, Roy. It's amazing. You got to give the defense credit, and you got to give Mike Smith credit. That guy's been the whipping boy for Buccaneer fans for what's seemingly been forever because of the Chicago loss and the bye week and all of that. But I like the adjustments he made in the second half, and I love the way the defense played in the second half. But boy, they just can't afford to keep playing like that for one half at least.
No, they can't. And I hope that Mike Smith learned something from this game as it pertains to this football team, this year's Buccaneers defense. He's a very smart defensive coordinator. You have to give him that. The scheme is not quite working right now the way it's designed to work. A lot of that is, I think, a result of, and we've gone through this, the injuries in the secondary, which is forcing the Buccaneers to play horribly inexperienced players in the secondary. And the experienced players they've got, see Brent Grimes, are not playing at the level that they're expected to play. Let's face it, either something's wrong with Brent Grimes or he's hit the wall. And I've seen veterans hit a wall, and this is sort of what it looks like. You just don't have the same level of execution that you normally do. But here's what happened. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the Buccaneers ran about a dozen blitzes in the first half. And I think all but about two of them really worked out well for them in terms of what it was they were designed to do, which is force a throwaway, force a bad pass, put the quarterback under pressure so that he doesn't complete a pass. The ones that did worked only because there were breakdowns again in coverage in the secondary, and there were breakdowns everywhere. It was incredible how many breakdowns there were, and I will continue to say, and I'm not defending Mike Smith, I'm just saying that to me the bigger problem with the defense is execution. And what they did in the second half is they came out, they went with the blitzes right from the start. They knew it was working for them, and they executed their assignments much better for the first three series. You go back and look at the first half, 5 possessions for the Falcons, 3 touchdowns, 1 3-and-out, and a field goal. That's the first half. Second half starts off with 3 straight punts. All the Falcons get is 30 yards, and it's all a result of being a lot more aggressive and, in essence, a lot more in tune with your assignments defensively. And I think the difference there, Mike and Justin, I think the thing there is, I think by playing aggressively, you're not thinking as much. Instead of, I think you're just thinking, let's go play football. And I think really that's what's got to happen with this defense is they just have to get aggressive and go play football and stop thinking about where am I supposed to be on this play? Where am I supposed to be on that play? I think that's part of what's going on with this defense right now. I think there's just too much thinking going on because it is complex. And I think when they play aggressive, they kind of just get after it and know that, look, I'm man to man. That's my guy. I got to follow him wherever he goes. And if he beats me, it's on me because it's not on the scheme because we ran the right play.
So many things we looked at going into the season. You touched on Brent Grimes, and you thought the defense could count on him, and obviously that's been a huge disappointment, even though he had a nice play against Julio Jones, albeit Matt Ryan didn't have the best throw on that play. It's amazing to me that Julio Jones hadn't scored a touchdown this year. Unbelievable. The amount of yards he compiles, that's incredible. But let's look at this defense. Jason Pierre-Paul has lived up to the hype, every bit of it. He's been great. But I think at times, Roy, Quan Alexander led this team in tackles, but even guys you thought you could count on, and the secondary is obviously the biggest problem on this defense. And it was good that Bo Allen returned to the D-line, but it seems like as a whole, even guys you thought you could count on, from Grimes to maybe even the linebackers, they're not playing the same way we've seen in recent years.
No, they're not, and I'm not surprised. And the reason I say that, again, is it is a complicated defense. Even defensive ends have rules, and that's what they refer to them as. Some people call them keys, but most of them refer to them as rules. And the rules say that, on this particular call, you drop back 5 yards and play, zone defense, or you rush the passer, and you've got to take this technique and everything else. And yeah, there's a lot that goes on there. And for a newcomer, even if they're a veteran like Vinny Curry or Jason Pierre-Paul, there's a lot going on there. It's much easier for Jason Pierre-Paul, whose job 90% of the time is just go straight forward and go get the quarterback. That's easy. It's a little bit harder on Bo Allen. It's a little bit harder on Vinny Curry. So I'm not surprised that they're getting what they expected out of Jason Pierre-Paul. And by the way, I approached that, and he did something today that no Bucs defensive lineman has done. Actually, no Bucs defender has done in a long, long time. You'll have to read the pewterpirates.com, my breakdown on pewterpirates.com to find out what that is. It's a little teaser. But He did something today no defensive end, or actually no defender in the Bucs in a Bucs uniform has done in a long, long time. And he's doing his part, and I think some other guys are, but just consistently throughout the group, not everybody is doing their part enough, and that's got to change.
Yeah, let's go back to the offensive side. Jameis Winston's first start, and so many great things. Hit 9 different targets, threw for 395 yards, very efficient, 30 of 41. But the turnovers, I'm sorry, the elite quarterbacks in this league, they don't make a lot of these throws that Jameis is doing. And in games like this in the NFL, and you know this, Roy and Justin, most of these games come down to one, 2, 3 plays. And Jameis Winston admitted this afterwards. In terms of turnovers, he can't make these costly mistakes anymore.
Just can't do it. I was late to it. You can't turn the ball over at the 6-yard line. And I think that's really going to be the story of the game. You can't turn the ball over twice today. Our defense played excellent in the second half. Excellent. We just got to protect the football.
That is the story of the game. Yeah, Chandler Catanzaro misses an extra point. The defense was horrible in the first half. But the bottom line is, Jameis Winston, for all the good he does, Dirk Koetter touched on it, you still have the bet.
Jameis, he does so many good things out there. He does so many good things. And he has composure. He can make all the throws. He runs the team. He scrambles. He's tough. But there's a couple balls you'd like to have back, and that's every quarterback in the league. That's playing quarterback in the NFL. So I think Jameis played well for a huge percentage of the game.
The quarterback gets a lot of the credit and a lot of the blame. I'm going to give him credit, but I'm going to give him some blame, Roy. Jameis just can't make some of those throws.
You're right. I would say scheme is part of it today. The first interception, in my opinion, is more scheme related. You're throwing the ball downfield. That's going to happen when you do that. The one I didn't like is the one that was truly inside the red zone from the 6-yard line that he alluded to. He tries to hit Chris Godwin there, and he's got to throw that ball a little bit higher, simply because so that Chris Godwin is the only one who can catch that ball, and if he doesn't catch it, nobody does. That's how that ball's got to be thrown. At the same time, he had a wide open Adam Humphries out in the flat there, about 6 yards from the end zone. So that could have worked out too. He had time on that play. Would have liked to have seen him, throw to Humphries, obviously, because he was wide open. Maybe to have a little bit better look at it. But look, guys, at the end of the day, that's what you get when you have a gunslinger. Think of Brett Favre. This is what you have. And I'm not comparing Jameis Winston to Brett Favre, saying that they're, the same kind of quarterback. Well, I mean, they are the same kind of quarterback. I'm not saying that Jameis Winston is as good as Brett Favre. What I'm saying is they were both gunslingers. And gunslingers will try to thread needles like Jameis did today. And sometimes, when you're trying to do that, you just make a mistake. You don't necessarily look around for your best option. And that's something Jameis has got to learn. But still, like Dirk said, you're going to have to take the bad with the good with Jameis Winston, because at the end of the day, look at the numbers, guys. At the end of the day, 395 yards, and he's got 115 passer rating. There's not much to dislike. 4 touchdowns. This was a hell of an effort by Jameis Winston. 30 of 41, 395 yards, 4 touchdowns, 115.4 passer rating. That's exceptional. Two interceptions. You know what? The Buccaneers on most days should win with that quarterback effort. No, you don't like the 2 picks, but 4 touchdowns versus 2 picks, 115.4 passer rating, 395 yards. You got to like that. You win with that kind of quarterback play 99% of the time.
This is what I liked about Jameis Winston. All the things that you said and the stats that we've talked about, this is the play I liked about Jameis Winston today. It really showed me he's grown up. When he was hit on the sideline, you kind of debate whether that was a late hit or not. And I applaud Ryan Jensen for sticking up for his quarterback, whether that was a late hit or not. That sends a good message to the team, the offensive line, everything. I applaud him for that. But in the past, I think Jameis Winston would have been emotional. He would have gotten the guy's face. He wouldn't have tried to separate Ryan Jensen. I thought that was a real teaching point. To me, that Jameis Winston has learned a little bit in terms of controlling his emotions a little bit. Did you feel that way watching that play?
Couldn't agree more. To me, it's another example of another example of how Jameis Winston has grown and continues to grow as a pro, as a player, as a quarterback. I still think Jameis Winston is making great strides for the amount of time he's got in the NFL. He's learning from his mistakes. That's what I'm seeing. And again, at the end of the day, he was one of the best players on the field for either team. He's the reason the Buccaneers had a chance to win this game at the end. And he's the reason the Bucs, had a chance to win it on the absolute last play. He's one of the few reasons that they were actually in the game at the end after being down as badly as they were at halftime. So I got no qualms at all with the way Jameis Winston played today. No, I don't like the 2 interceptions. One of them is definitely on him. I don't know if the other one is necessarily. Didn't have the best throw on the first one, but could have had a better throw on the second one as well. But at the end of the day, he'll learn from that, is my guess, because I'm seeing him learn from other mistakes consistently as we go on.
This is your bonus edition of A Few Extra Bucs. Of course, we give you 2 podcasts during the week, but we also give you post-game coverage of every Buccaneer game as well. And coming up, we're going to have a new segment in our post-game coverage called Game Balls and Game Falls. We're each going to give a game ball and a game fall to, in our opinion, the hero and maybe the GOAT of the game, in our opinion. I want to ask you about this hypothetical, because usually we have a 3 and out in our weekly podcast, Roy and Justin. But each one of you, I want you to answer this. If Jameis Winston wasn't suspended, okay, had the great preseason, went into the season, would have been the starting quarterback, you wouldn't have seen the Fitz magic in the first 2 games, would this team be 2-3 right now, or would they be worse, or would they be better? What do you think their record would be for the Bucs?
It's hard for me to say it would be much better, because it's hard for me to say that Jameis Winston could have played any better than Ryan Fitzpatrick in the first 2.5 games.
Yeah.
What we saw out of Jameis Winston today is what we're going to continue to see out of Jameis Winston. You're going to see him make great plays and throw for a lot of yards and throw touchdown passes, but you're also going to see him throw picks that hurt your team and basically hurt you in the end. So I have a hard time believing that they would be much better off. There's probably a better chance that they're worse off. But then again, he has made strides, and I think people, before they get too worked up about how Jameis Winston played today, keep in mind this was his first start of 2018. Before this, he had a half's worth of snaps against a Chicago team that basically had the game locked up. So I thought for his first start, thought he played really well. Could they be better off without, had Jameis Winston been the starter all along? It's hard for me to say they would.
What say you, Justin?
Well, with the exception of the Bears game, I don't think the offense has really been a problem for the Bucs. It's been the defense. So, whether Winston would have played at the same level that Fitzpatrick was the first couple of games, I still think, obviously, the defense. Now, today they played much better in the second half, but the defense is what lost them, the games this year. So I still think their record probably would have been the same.
My question is, and I agree with you guys on the offense, but I don't think Jameis Winston could have played the way Ryan Fitzpatrick did in the first 2 games. It's still crazy to me that Ryan Fitzpatrick plays as bad as he did against the Chicago Bears. It's just been a weird season for the Bucs, guys. It's just strange to me. I don't know if they'd be 2-3. Maybe they would be 1-4 with Jameis Winston. Maybe they would have lost that game in New Orleans. I still think they maybe would have won the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm still trying to figure out this team, because I see both sides of it. I see Jameis Winston being better moving forward. I agree, Roy. This is his first start. Did a lot of positive things. I think he'll learn from this. I think he's more mature. I think he'll make better decisions. But I don't know how good this team is. I mean, they're so up and down. I mean, the defense is horrible against Chicago. They're horrible in the first half. Then they kind of bounce back. But, boy, if Gerald McCoy is out, and they didn't really comment on his injury afterwards, you have Brent Grimes, you have the up and down play of linebackers you used to count on. I don't know what to make of this team moving forward, Roy. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I don't either. I saw some good signs in the second half today from the defense. To me, it shows that it's capable of doing much, much better. Can they put a game like that, like those 3-4 series they had today in the second half, can and they put a full game of that together on defense, boy, you have to believe they can. And let's not forget, that's a pretty good offense they were going up against today too. So I got to believe they can. I think the offense is dynamic no matter who's the quarterback. I like what we saw out of Peyton Barber today. I think the Bucs still haven't hit their stride as a team. I still think there's better to come, and I think we'll see it. I really do. But how much better, and is it enough to get them into the playoffs? I still think it's about an 8-8 kind of team, give or take, 1 or 2 victories. And, that's why games are so close like today. When you get down there and you get a chance to win it, man, you got to win it. And why every little play, when you're the Buccaneers or a team like the Bucs, you cannot afford to miss field goals. You cannot afford to miss tackles or miss assignments or blow a coverage. You just can't afford it because you are so vulnerable to the smallest mistake. You're not good enough to overcome those mistakes, no matter what side of the ball they're on. And that's what we saw today. They're good enough to play with anybody, I think, the Buccaneers, but they're not good enough to overcome even what seems like a minuscule mistake.
Yeah, the margin for error is very thin for this football team. It's thin in the NFL anyway, but with this team having so many holes, it's razor thin as well. All right, our last segment, we have the great soundtrack for 3 and Out, but I kind of threw this on you guys late, so we'll have to develop a new soundtrack for game balls and game falls. But we're each going to give a game ball, and it's okay if we give the same one because you know what's great about this podcast? We don't have a pre-show meeting. We just kind of let it flow, and we like the spontaneity of the podcast. So I'm going to have Roy go first. Roy, if you're Dirk Cutter and you hand out a game ball afterwards, who do you give it to?
I'm going to give mine to I'm not going to go with the obvious here. I'm going to go with the not so obvious, and I'm going to give it to Peyton Barber. I thought he had his best game of the season. He had more than 100 yards of total offense, including a touchdown reception in the passing game. Thought he ran very hard, picked up a couple of good blitzes, gave his quarterback a chance to get the ball out on occasion. I'm giving a game ball to Peyton Barber. It reaffirms to me that he can be the Bucs feature back and that they can get what they're looking for out of him going forward. So I give a nice pat on the back and a game ball to Peyton Barber on the offensive side.
Justin Thomas. I like the choice, Roy. Justin Thomas, who's your game ball go to?
Well, here I am thinking I'm going to be clever and go a little bit different, and then Roy steals my thunder. Oh. So I was going to give it to Peyton Barber, but since he took Peyton, I will give it to Jameis. I thought Jameis, like El said, played well. There still seems to be some chemistry issues between him and some of his receivers. There's a lot of missed throws and overthrows, but the fact that the Bucs were still in the game, I think, was largely due to Jameis. So I would give it to him.
Okay, I was going to go Peyton Barber. And, Roy Cummings and I disagree on everything from Billy Joel and John to Michael McDonald and Bob Seger. And I love the Beatles, by the way. We agree on that. But, I said in the beginning we could give it to the same guy. I'm actually going to disagree. Here's one for you guys. How about this? How about O.J. Howard? How about a guy that was supposed to be out for maybe 3 weeks?
Oh, that's good.
O.J. Howard, 4 targets, 4 receptions, and a touchdown. And, basically – plays hurt. I saw in one play, he made a play and you could tell he was hurting out there today. And I agree with Jameis. I mean, Jameis, to me, the good thing, we mentioned the play earlier, Roy, about his composure. I also like the fact that he's used to spreading the wealth a little more. Found 9 different guys and found 4 different guys for touchdowns. That's good. But I'm going to give it to O.J. Howard just for gutting it up. Kind of hurting my fantasy team because I thought I was a genius picking up Cam Brate because he'd be out for a couple weeks and Cam Brate would get all the touches. But that's okay, OJ.
Well, but you know what? Hey, Cam Brate gave you a touchdown today too, and let's not forget that it's a great group of tight ends. And in fact, I mentioned that in my breakdown of the game today, available on pewterpirates.com. Yet another tease to that, which if you check it out, you'll find out what I'm talking about how good these Buccaneers tight ends are. We saw it today, and not just with the touchdown passes to Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard. We saw it in another way early on that really benefited the Bucs offense, and you'll have to go and read my breakdown of the game on pewterpirates.com in order to see that.
Roy's rapid reaction. We like to call it, was it R cubed, I guess we could call it? Roy's rapid reaction. RQ, baby. Even Auclair had a catch today. So Jameis was finding everybody, all the tight ends. Okay, here's conversely, guys. Time for game falls. We've given game balls. Game fall to somebody you were kind of disappointed in. I hate to say GOAT a lot of the time. I don't like the words GOAT and choke in sports. I think that's a little harsh sometimes, but we'll go game. Who's your game fall today, Roy?
All right, I'm going to try to help you guys out, okay? Because I think I know who one of yours is. I mean, it's an obvious one to me. I'm going to go with Ryan Smith, the cornerback, who started today opposite Brent Grimes and was horrible. Again, in the first half alone, Matt Ryan was 5 for 6 for God knows how many yards. And again, I go into detail on this a little bit in my breakdown of the game today, available on pewterpirates.com. Make sure you check it out. 5 for 6 for God knows how many yards and a touchdown in the first half alone. And one of these, and again, there was an example today in this game of why Mike Smith is getting beat up for things which aren't his problem. There was a short pass in the red zone to Austin Hooper, tight end for the Falcons today. And Ryan Smith, was face-to-face with Austin Hooper at about the 9-yard line. He was 1 yard away from him. All he had to do was make a tackle against a tight end. This is a cornerback, nimble, quick, speedy, against a tight end, not as nimble, quick, or speedy. And he whiffed on the tackle, and it turned out to be a touchdown. I'm going to go with Ryan Smith because his lack of execution really hurt the Buccaneers in the first half, and the Bucs never caught up, by the way. So that's who I'm giving it to. Ryan Smith, this one's on you.
I like it. Nobody in the NFL would be envious of the way Ryan Smith.
You got that right. And let me tell you, some people be envious of Ryan Smith because he's in the NFL, but I'm not so sure that those people who are be envious of him would be worse than him.
Let's get that across. All right, Justin Thomas, how do you follow that up?
Well, mine's is a little bit different. The person I'm going to pick played pretty well throughout the game, but at the very end of the game, last drive, going down the field, obviously the Bucs needed the touchdown to win, and my person made a play that I just was screaming, why are you doing that? And it was when Mike Evans caught the catch on the sideline. Yep. Instead of going out of bounds to stop the clock, he stayed in bounds. I think that took off at least 20 seconds on the clock. And that's time that you need at the end when you're down deep and you need a couple more throws in the end zone. That's something they didn't have. And that could have been the difference probably in the game if he would have gone out of bounds.
Especially if Quinn doesn't have the surprise move to have Matt Bryant kick that field goal. Can you imagine if they make that drive, he goes out of bounds, and they had plenty of time to force this thing, to overtime, I guess, right? If they kick a field goal, wouldn't it have gone to overtime?
Well, if Brian would have not made the field goal,
yeah. If they would have just punted the Bucs back, they make a drive, which I think makes that Quinn call even more impressive because I'm confident the way Winston was moving that offense in the last drive, they would have gotten at least a field goal there.
I agree.
So, all right, guys, I'm going to throw this one out there. And I could throw Catanzaro under the bus, whatever. It's just it's one extra point. I could have, but here's what I'm going to do. I don't know if you agree with me on this, all right? I'm going to give it to Gerald McCoy, for a few reasons here. I know he got hurt, but he didn't have a tackle in this game, guys. And, Jason Pierre-Paul, Bo Allen was healthy this game. Vita Vea is getting more comfortable. Gerald McCoy has help now. He has help. And before that play, I didn't see him doing a whole lot in this game. And beyond that, as a media member, I'm going to say this too. I don't like the way Gerald McCoy's handling himself in the locker room this season. The media's tried to talk to him. He's waved them off. He's been, I think, oversensitive a little bit. That's one issue. But I don't know how you feel, Roy. I know he was hurt in this game, but Gerald McCoy didn't do a lot in this game.
He did actually officially he did not get a tackle, but he actually had a tackle for loss. He got into the backfield and stopped one of the runners. I can't remember the runner actually, but he made a stop behind the line of scrimmage, and the runner never recovered and fell down, and I guess they didn't give anybody a tackle there. He also had a quarterback hit today. And I'll say this. No, he didn't have a lot of numbers, but you know what? You can't judge defensive tackles by numbers. And what I saw, so I guess I'm disagreeing with you, Mike, but what I saw, you should go with Catanzaro. What I saw a different defense after McCoy left the game today. And I think it wasn't as good. They were rolling there at the beginning. They had those three good, solid series to start the second half. Then McCoy got hurt, and they gave up 10 points after that. So I'm not going to blame Gerald McCoy much. In fact, I think if you really break down the tape, I would need a coach to tell me this, but how much is Gerald McCoy responsible for the 5 sacks that Jason Pierre-Paul has? My guess is he's pretty responsible because he's taken up 2 guys, sometimes 3. I also saw him today a couple of times when he was in there taking on 3 blockers because he's shifting left to right, and other blockers are having to come in and take him. And there was one play where Jason Pierre-Paul got in and hurried Matt Ryan, and it was all a result of McCoy picking up that extra third blocker, which basically let Pierre-Paul fly through on his own. So I'm not going to blame him as much. I'm going to say a game fall to Mike Nabors on this one for not taking Chandler Catanzaro.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, though. Wasn't Gerald McCoy supposed to benefit from all these free agent acquisitions? And I know you make great points, but didn't you think he'd be having a better year at this point just based on all the talent around him that he hasn't had in his Buccaneer career?
Yeah, but again, defensive tackle in a zone scheme like this is just not going to generate a lot of numbers necessarily. And I still think at the end of the year, he's still going to have numbers. I really do. I don't think it's going to be as bad as, unless he misses 5 games with this what appears to be a calf injury. I think Gerald McCoy's still doing his job. Let me put it to you this way: of all the people I'm worried about on the Bucs defense who aren't doing their job, he's not at the top of my list. Nowhere near, in fact.
I'm just saying this. I expected, the Ryan Smiths, the MJ Stewarts, the young corners. I guess I could throw Brent Grimes as a game fall, but that's like a broken record. I have high standards for Gerald McCoy. And when I look at the stat sheet, and you have great points. You break it down perfectly. I just expect more out of him, especially because he has help. I mean, he hasn't had a Jason Pierre-Paul, Roy, since he's been in Tampa. Really? I mean, he hasn't had a guy like that. I thought he would benefit from a lot of this. And I know a lot of the dirty work, but he's had sacks in the past, and he's had numbers before, and you're just not seeing the numbers now. I'm just saying, from that, but you have great points, and maybe I deserve a game fall for that. I'm just kind of throwing that out.
I see where you're coming from, and yes, you're right about he should be a better player, but most of the tackles today were by linebackers and guys in the secondary. Why? Because this was mostly a passing attack that we saw from the Falcons today. You look at those numbers, and they ran it. They only ran it 22 times, the Falcons. So 41 passes for Matt Ryan, 22 runs for the Buccaneers. A lot of those came after McCoy was out of the game. I'm not going to be too concerned about the way Gerald McCoy played today. Numbers weren't there, but they seldom are going to be, especially when you pass as much as the. Now he should have more, pass rushing stats perhaps, but he's not getting a lot of help from guys on the inside either.
Yeah. Well, Gerald, if you're listening, I know you're not a big fan of the media these days. Roy Cummings is defending you on a few extra bucks. So if he appears in the locker room, maybe you can just blow us all off and give Roy the exclusive. So, somebody's sticking up for you.
Wouldn't be the first time I've had an exclusive. Wouldn't be.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, the Bucs lose 3 in a row, and they'll keep trudging forward here. But that wraps up another edition of A Few Extra Bucs here on pewterpirates.com. We'll be back during the week with 2, as we normally do. And we'd like to thank our title sponsors, of course, House of Brews in Lutz, Florida. I was there on Friday night, man. Great food, great service, great brews. Lutz, Florida, on the corner of North Del Mabry and Van Dyke. And, of course, Sea Dog Brewing Company, Treasure Island location on the beach, and Clearwater. For Justin Thomas, for our Buccaneer insider Roy Cummings, who always has it down, predicting games this season, and sticking up for Gerald McCoy. I'm merely Mike Nabors. Thanks for logging on. Subscribe to pewterpirates.com. It's free, folks. We appreciate it.